Good afternoon, everyone. Since which time, as in since I was last sitting here and we were all happily discussing these matters, I've been informed that we've got a time constraint that I wasn't aware of before. So the time constraint that we have is that the Office of the Auditor General needs to have the response on the amendments to the LTP by today. So by close of play today, we have to have completed all the amendments. So we still will have the final vote on Friday, but we need to go through the process of these amendments. So I'm going to propose a way of focusing on those things that we actually do have to resolve as part of this LTP. And as a general principle, and I'm going to suggest that we deal with the Jamie's amendments first, which are the DC amendments, the development contribution amendments. And so if we deal with them first, then we will take a short adjournment after that so that we can just resolve amongst ourselves what the order of play will be. But from an initial assessment of what really does need to be voted on, we're getting some advice on the Northern Arterial, but it looks from a legal point of view that we can't take it off the budget because it's in a process at the moment, but we will get staff to come and give that advice. In terms of the ones that need to be voted on, the bringing forward of the Linwood-Woolston pool would have to be voted on separately because it is such a significant change to the impact on rates, and possibly the proposal to inflation adjust community funding, which my suggestion would be to refer that to the Working Party on community funding, but it's a proposal, so I'm completely open about that. And then, of course, the financial strategy and strategic assets, the growth expenditure being removed from the LTP, the strategic assets, which ones are in and out of the lists, and then the capital release proposals dealt with as a single question at the conclusion. So they're the big issues all dealt with. And my recommendation would be that we refer proposals that can be dealt with by the Chief Executive through prioritisation or just simply action within existing budgets, but then with a short time frame for report back on those. Some of the bigger issues to go to her for report back over the course of the next few months. So so that's the way that I would propose that we deal with it. So if we just deal with the development contributions amendment first, and then we will pause for a break and sort out exactly how we're going to handle that. I know, Andrew, you've got some amendments that somehow got lost in the process, but they probably would get easily fixed within the... Yeah, that's right. So if we could hand over, Jamie, you'd like to move that, and is that a hand going up to second that motion? Are there any questions on it at all?
Process one from me, which is ironic since I've moved it. I'm just wondering, you may have already done this, but are we able to just move them together? They're extremely similar, and it would seem weird one and not the other, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So I see that would make it
from
quicker
a process point of view, I've got no problems with that.
And make sense to do them together.
Yep.
Unless anyone was...
Can I just understand the impact, because it's not rate neutral?
What is the impact on rating? Okay, Mike.
So the way that these work is that, yes, they're not rate neutral, because obviously we're taking money out of the DC account, so we need to credit money back in. That comes in as new money. How that the system works, and Mr. Moe will leap to my assistance the minute I get it wrong, but effectively, because these are capital projects, we can take the funding that we set aside for these and effectively add to our capital borrowing for the 10 million and for the 5 million. The impact on the net impact on the of the changes for if we extend the residential rebate, so adding another 10 million through to 2018 is 0.02% in year 1, 0.07% in year 2, 0.06% in year 3 and 0.04% in year 4. And if we add the commercial rebate, which is 5 million at $1 million a year over 5 years, it's 0.01% in year 1, 0.02% thereafter, and in the 5th year, 0.01%.
All right. Yanni?
I can't claim to have calculated those, but our finance gurus have.
So just in simple terms, $15 million is being added to the capital borrowing over
a period of 5 years.
5 years,
Yeah.
right? So that has a rates impact.
As I've described there.
So what's the total rates impact?
Well, I've got the.
Next year it will be 0.03% for both of them, that would be.
Yeah, but 0.03 on 7.97 takes it to 8.
Right. Okay. So I'm just trying to understand the funding behind it. If we really wanted it to be cost neutral, surely the way to do it is to change the DC policy to rate more for areas that aren't in the central city. That would seem the logical thing to do. And it would be a very small percentage increase across the rest of the city to pay for it. So has that been looked at? And if not, how can that happen?
Well, it can't happen because the law doesn't provide for it to happen. So, the law does not allow us to take monies that are that are determined by the policy to be paid across an area and charge more to another area. So that's why we use a rebate to say, actually, if you are not going to recover that from the communities that are supposed to pay it, then effectively the most transparent way is actually for that to be funded over the entire community.
What I'm trying to understand is I thought we could have catchments with our DC's policy. So if we had a catchment in the central city that says we're not going to charge DCs because we've already got existing infrastructure in place and we don't believe that we need these to deal with the growth that we've had depopulation, etc., etc. Why can't we do that as opposed to having to ratepayer monies to subsidise this development?
Well, in fact, in the central city, because there are no net new capital works planned apart from renewals and repairs, the only DCs we're actually recovering for are a small number of what we will call citywide DCs. So all developments across the city contribute to the city's regional parks program. So it's a small handful of those which are being recovered in the central city only. So there's no DCs at the moment being paid for any significant other infrastructure. So you either are saying, actually, we should, if you want to take that DC away, effectively, you're saying either that part of the community shouldn't be contributing to that DC, which is not how that DC is structured, or you're saying, actually, you remove that capital works program to take out that capital cost.
But we can do it, I guess is the point. Like, we do have that. We can actually do that through our DC.
Well, you wouldn't do it through the DC's policy. You would yes, you could make a decision that a catchment isn't going to pay a certain DC, but you can't then go on to recover that from every other catchment.
Yeah.
You are basically then saying either we're going to reduce what we're going to be spending in that area, but you'd have to come up with a rationale to say, well, why is that catchment actually now not going to pay that particular DC, particularly when it's a citywide DC?
Who was it Dave? Was it you? Who had their hand up over here? Was it? Okay.
Can I just clarify, in terms of 5 million
residential DCs, what value of building is required to achieve that?
Well, that's quite difficult to predict because what we've based it on is the the incidence of DCs that we've had in the central city over the last 3 years.
Okay,
And because a lot of the central city, of course, is actually being rebuilt back on existing credits.
right, of course, yeah.
So I think that we've gained we've probably incurred around $3 million of DC income based on the back of something in the order of, I think, 200 million plus worth of capital investment, because there isn't a big DC component in the central city at the moment.
Okay, and just the second question I have is that if there is a major residential development likely to happen, and it is already timetabled in terms of the contract for that residential development, this could go into just a double win, really, in that area, couldn't it?
You have to be a bit clearer, sorry.
So if, for example, the entire east frame was about to be announced in a couple of weeks, and part of the contract was that they had to deliver according to a certain time frame, by giving them DCs doesn't alter that time frame, and it doesn't change the outcome that's already agreed.
It doesn't change the outcome for them because they've got a contractual relationship to deliver. It might make it cheaper if they're eligible for DC rebates.
All right, any further questions? Tim?
Second last bullet point under residential DCs, the requirement for an urban design assessment be removed from the policy. If we remove that, what's the point of having a policy with regards to it? Isn't that there as a safeguard or a guideline for quality or design standard, rather than its effect?
So I think there's two issues there, and this is Councillor Goff's resolution, not my resolution.
Yes.
But I think that what we probably would say is that if we extend the residential one, we'd like to simplify the way that the urban design, rather than removing the urban design assessment entirely, we'd like to simplify that. At the moment, it's slightly complex, and they go through effectively 2 stages of urban design. So if this was to be extended, and we were to be dealing with another 10 million, we'd probably come back to the council and seek to simplify how the policy is administered. So I think that's the first point. I think the second point is that, particularly in the residential, where we're trying to encourage a new, this is all about encouraging a different form of development than was previously there. We think that actually doing an urban design assessment is actually still worthwhile, particularly because what we're seeing in these are largely coming in as townhouse or small apartment block developments.
So rather than say remove, could we say simplify?
I think basically if you were going to be explicit, you would say that staff report back on simplifying the DC assessment, the urban design assessment for this rebate.
Councillor Goss, but I would prefer that.
More than happy to, if that's workable for staff, whatever works.
All right, so, sorry?
Just change to that wording.
So you're happy to take that out?
Change the wording.
If we just, Chris, if we just put, amend that one to read that staff report back on modifications to the policy to simplify the urban design assessment.
All right, so, you've got another question?
Oh, just clarification of the wording of the amendment. It says the rebate will be cost neutral to DC budgets and funded through existing sources. I think in the resolution it would be good to make clear the financial impact on the rates. So is that possible to be added so that people are really clear what,
Or we can. I mean, do you wish to split those out or do them for... It's the way the tables come to me, I've actually got the net change for both of them.
Right.
So perhaps it would be, the prudent way would be at the bottom of both of them is perhaps have a noting resolution that notes that the rating impact of introducing these...
Well, I think just the second point under the first one.
It could
and
be
funded
misleading.
From rates or funding
Could be
from-
misunderstood.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so why don't we
just-
just take it out? Does it have to be said that way?
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing.
I mean,
we can do.
it's not, it doesn't add anything other than the view that it's cost neutral.
But it's not cost neutral.
No,
is it?
no, it's not cost neutral to rates.
Cost neutral to the DC. I mean,
It's technically correct, but it's misleading. We know about these statements.
sounds like a political statement.
It does.
So yes, look, that can come out because it's simply a statement rather than a direction of action.
Yes, so to the mover.
Ali sent me one of those links
Look,
too.
I work with staff on this, so staff have said that was what they found most workable and that was what I was provided, so if they're comfortable with that, then I'm happy. There's no point me wanting to put wording that isn't workable. I'm just working with staff on what they need.
Yeah, I mean, we're happy with that, but I mean, equally, it's not needed to actually make the resolutions work.
Well,
No.
perhaps if Yanni will support it, I'll agree to perhaps changing the wording.
Well, no, I don't support it, but that's another.
Well, they must want to change the wording.
But I just think it should be clear. Like, and the other one was there's no mention of the 5 million. So that's what's being added. Then I just think that should be. The first one mentions the 10, but the second one doesn't.
Okay, so perhaps in that under that commercial non-residential DC rebate, Chris, once you've edited that out. If we go to the top line, the council agrees to provide a development contributions rebate for non-residential to the value of $5 million over 5 years.
And then down the bottom underneath the both of them,
Yeah,
the rates impact.
Yeah, so that the rates impact for both these rebates will be 0.01% in 2016.
Oh, I thought you said 3.
No, the overall change in rates is
Yeah. No,
yeah,
no.
but so there's also a netting out because there was some actual there was in the way that the numbers were constructed, there was some rebate. So what I haven't told you is that by putting these in, we've actually reduced some costs that are already built into the LTP. So the net change for both of them is 0.01% in 2016, 0.04% in 2017.
Sorry, do you mean 15, 16,
Yeah,
16,
sorry,
17?
15, 16,
Yeah.
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 16, 17 is 0.04%, 17, 18 is 0.08%, 18, 19 is 0.05%, and 19, 20 is 0.01%. Sorry, the last four numbers, so 18, 19 is 0.05% and 19, 20 is 0.01%. 16, 17, no, 000, yes, that's correct. So 001, 004, 008, 005, 001.
All right, so is there any debate on the resolution? Jamie, you want to kick off?
Yeah. And yes, Yanni wants to go first.
Oh, you go.
No, because you'll get a right of reply at the end.
Tactical, but it didn't work. Okay. I guess a lot of you are familiar with the work that's been going on with this. This was implemented originally about 3 years ago for residential in the CBD. And for those of you that are on the development forum, which I chair there, and I think we have about 8 elected members that are on that with organisational heads of institutions and organisations that are involved in the rebuild of Christchurch. We also then bring in a whole host of other people involved in development in the city. You know, we've had from the New Brighton Business Association there through to some of the bigger bigwig property developers through to the mum and dad type people, the first time ones, through to actually someone that's made a submission at the LTP that has just exclusively done residential development. They've done it in parts of Sumner and now they're concentrating on city stuff there. I'm going to speak to both the commercial / non-residential DC rebate and the residential one together because they're much the same. They go hand in glove. Very briefly, to touch specifically on the residential one, I firmly believe, and as Paul said, it's people. And with the central city, why we were failing, in my opinion, in the past, is we didn't have the population there. You look at every city that works, you have people living there. It's not a 5-day-a-week city, it's a 7-day-a-week city. Say that we had that pre-earthquake, but we didn't. Our city was broken before the earthquake. It really was. And I think as a result of the earthquake, we have a unique opportunity to fix not only the literal cracks, but also the metaphorical ones of what wasn't quite right in the past. And we didn't have people living there. So how residential DC rebate worked and why it was embraced by the likes of the property council is it sent a signal to say, despite all the uncertainty that we have in the city right now, it'll never be cheaper than it is today to add value to what you had before. Instead of building back that 3-storey office building that you had, you can actually add, we want you to put a rooftop garden there and 4 apartments, but instead of you paying $40,000 per apartment there and you actually having to reach into your own back pocket and pay development contributions to add value to your rebuild, we're going to remove the barriers. You've got enough of them, and we will say that you can do that and there'll be no DCs from us. We have very few levers that we can pull. I would love to pull a lever which says that property developer X or potential investor X's bank manager says, yep, invest in Christchurch. Unfortunately, we don't have that lever to pull. I'd love to pull a lever that says cost of construction is going to remain level for the next 5 years and it's not going to be prohibitive. I can't do that, you can't do that. Wish we could. One of the few things that we have at our disposal is development contributions, and Leanne got a letter from the Property Council and it was copied through to me and it was reiterated, and those of you on the development forum will be aware of this, that they've said one of the single best things that this council has done, the lever that they've pulled to incentivise development in the city and getting it back on its feet, was this original initiative. It sent a good signal, and in tangible terms it meant real things. And we had a guy that I'd never met before until I met him because we invited him as a guest to the development forum because he had a whole host of residential projects in the central city. He'd done them in the past, and that's exclusively what he'd done. And he said, we wouldn't have invested and built in the central city again with all the uncertainty had this not got through. Had the development contributions rebate on residential developments there not been passed, there were too many uncertainties and we wouldn't have actually acted. We did act as a result of that, and it meant that the houses and apartments that we have going up for sale, we're selling them and they start with a 4. He said if that wasn't there, they'd start with a 5. But he said, but the reality was we probably wouldn't have done them anyway. So that means with every single one of those, that brings in another person, that brings in another family. And then because you've got another family there, then it's an attractive place to live. You start building a community. It means that coffee shop down the road has people going in there for their morning coffee and reading the paper and getting their bagel every day. It means that they start doing well. It means that there's flow-on effects that affect the place next door. And you start then building up an ecosystem inside this city, which has actually got a future, and you've got a 7-day-a-week city and not a 5-day-a-week city. Having a heart that works, it benefits every single suburb in the city. It benefits the Aranuis through to the Akaroas, the Bishopdales through to Brightons, because the central city is something that's shared by everyone. And if you go to Sydney, I've said this before, you don't jump on What If and say I want to stay in Sydney suburbs. You know, there's great malls and everything there, but you want to be in the heart of it. You might go and check out those other things, but you want to base yourself in a metropolitan core. And I want to have one that works, and I want to have one that people really back. So it's worked with the residential rebate policy, and we've seen that. The commercial one, it's actually more ingenious, and no other council that I'm aware in Christchurch is doing this, and I really have to commend staff on the work that's been done on it, because it's an innovative, customer-focused way to say, let's do something a little bit differently that sends a signal to say, we are the most business-friendly local authority in New Zealand. We have potential to say that if you were going to be up for DCs for your development in the central city, you are now no longer going to pay them. It is a DC-free zone. And that is because it comes from an existing pool. You have existing DC credits which are currently there. And that kind of incentivises land banking, which we really don't want. It means that if you don't have a whole lot of motivation, your accountant or bank manager is saying, do you know what, put your capital somewhere else, go to Sydney, go to Auckland, go offshore. Or you just put a great big dirty old car park there and just wait and see what happens and wait for everything else to level off. I don't want that to happen. You don't want that to happen. I want to send a signal, and I hope you do too, to say, now is the time to act. Do you know what? Be bold, back our city, because if you don't, no one else is going to either. So the idea of actually, it's not so much just saying that everyone else funds DCs. What it's saying is it reallocates them. It means that that pool of DC credits, which already exist, the credits are extinguished and they're pulled together just for the central city. And it says, if you're going to act now, and you're going to decide that you're not going to have a dirty car park there for the next 10 years, and you're going to build a fantastic development there which is going to employ people and have cool shops and things to actually come to Christchurch for, then it will never be cheaper than today because you can tap into those DC credits. The guy that's sitting there and is going to have a car park for 20 years because he doesn't want to do anything, he misses out. He misses the boat. He's the one that actually funds those people that are putting their money where their mouth is and backing our city. And that's great because we get out of bed because we love our city and we come to work because we want to make it a better place, but we're giving the incentives there and the carrots there for other people to feel like we do too. And I think that that's a really, really exciting opportunity that we have to be able to pull that lever. The numbers that we're talking about, we're saying 0.0 something, you know? It's an investment in the future, and everyone that sits around that table has heard all of the people that are involved in this. They're not multi-millionaires just trying to do things to keep themselves busy. They're backing the city and they're passionate about it, but they're running out of reasons to back Christchurch. And I don't want to be taking any of them away. I want to be there. And it's a very cost-effective way of doing it. It's an innovative way of reorganising how the credits are used and how those DCs are spent. And it also means, like Grant McKinnon that presented at the long-term plan, and this is what I'm going to close on because I think it just sums it up really well. And it's not covered in any of these numbers because they're very black and white. But all of a sudden, that person that was looking at it and saying, look, I'm just going to sit on this car park and not do anything, real life story, you had a patch of land that was paying $5,000 a year to council in rates. Pre-development. Post-development, the council's rate take was $90,000 on that site. Plus there were people living there, working and all of that, bringing in people there. So I think that it speaks for itself. I think I would be surprised if anyone that sat around that development forum table for all the months we've been working with staff and the people in this industry wouldn't back it too. But fundamentally, if we don't have a central city that works, we don't have a city that works. So I hope I can count on your support with this, and I think it's a real game changer, and I can see Leanne cutting red tape around the city and saying this is the most business-friendly, investment-friendly city and territorial authority in the country, and we want your investment. Welcome to Christchurch. How can we help?
Yanni.
I understand the intent of what this is trying to do, and I have a lot of sympathy for making it easier for people to develop in the central city and more affordable versus the unsustainable cost of development on the periphery in the greenfields areas. So I think I can support the intent of what we're trying to achieve here, but I actually think this is the wrong way to do it because I don't think 15 million is small change. I think it's actually quite a huge amount of money going in at a time when we've got greater priorities and you know, we've just agreed to spend a fortune on the central city through the accessible transports projects. And when you read through some of the stuff coming out of the Productivity Commission, one of the really interesting things which ties into one of the conversations I would like us to have is actually rating based on land value as opposed to capital value. And what their recommendations are saying is that actually that looks at a much more sensible way of encouraging development and rather than land banking and a much better system of encouraging land flowing to its highest value uses, including more and denser housing. So, you know, I think that's a really important conversation to have. The other point that they make is that there should be an ability for increased use of targeted rates in these areas that are getting the benefit of that infrastructure. So, you know, I can't support the mechanism that sits behind this. I understand the intent of it, and I think there's other ways in which we could do this that truly would be cost neutral to rates, that would enable the same thing to happen that's being desired, because you know, we really need to start thinking about our DC's policy, and the fact is we've got catchments that go across the entire city, so the central city paying for the growth in Wainui, for example, I think is inherently unfair, and I'd rather focus on changing those policy settings to encourage development in the areas that have existing infrastructure or only need a slight additional spend to get the required infrastructure versus the unsustainable and the economically expensive development of infrastructure on our greenfields and in areas that are a lot further away from where our core infrastructure already is. So I appreciate the work that's gone into this. I can't support this in terms of the $15 million extra being asked to put on budget. There's other ways in which we can achieve the same thing, and I certainly took that from the submission that it was about changing a DC's policy, not simply offering more subsidies and more handouts to get this to happen.
It was a point of order. I didn't want to interrupt Yanni there because I didn't want to be rude, but I just do want to make a point of order for the record. He was on a